Okay, scholars, let's check out if this is doing well. The mic's not working or something. Maybe let's see this service. But hey, hope all's going well. I had you read a really interesting sort of chapter by this guy Cook. Covers a lot of material. But I wanted to focus on Gregory and Charlemagne and just sort of get them into your mind here. This is a freshman class, and this is the key. Notice that two names, Gregory and Charlemagne. Charles the Great, Gregory. These are Western Civ names, you know, and this is the kind of thing which you have in your life. You run into all these people named Gregory and Charles. Gregory actually does come from the Bible. It's in the Greek where Jesus tells his disciples to wake up. You know, that's Gregory, Gogorte, you know, wake up. And then with Charles, I don't know where the Charles comes from, but the Carolingian, Carol is the feminine of it and is the Latin. So, I want to talk about these two guys. This is, I like this guy here. He's a scribe. You see, that's his stylus, and he writes. This is a scribal scholar here. And then this is a bishop of Rome. And he's got a book here, you see, and this is what's going to be important for us. Oh, and by the way, Charlemagne here is holding a bowling ball, which symbolizes, of course, the globe, you know, and most bishops have a little globe on the top of their, scepter or something like that. Kings have the globe on the scepter, you know. So the thing is that, just a reminder that this statue is done around 900. And Middle Ages, Dark Ages weren't dark. Middle Ages did not believe the earth was flat. And then science comes along and teaches that the earth is round, you know. No, they knew quite well that the earth was a globe. And, if they thought the earth was flat, Charlemagne here would be holding a pizza box. So don't ever get caught up in these crazy notions that are taught by our modern hatred of the Middle Ages. Okay, so what we want to do here, though, is see that out of the Middle Ages comes a new political structure. It's an elective monarchy, and the papacy is going to turn into an elective monarchy, and we'll talk more about that at another time. But the Pope Gregory gets that started. And then we have an elective monarchy that's going to develop out of the Carolingian Empire. Charlemagne and his father Pepin get that started, stuff like that. But it's not going to develop till later. But this elective monarchy is a new political idea. And these political ideas come from the Bible. This is Melchizedek in Genesis, and he's giving the communion to Abraham. And this is one of the great stories of a priest king of Salem in the Bible. And so, in the Middle Ages, they give up on the Republican aspects of the Bible, but pull in on the priest king stuff. And so you don't get the emphasis on a Senate anymore. On the other hand, though, you do get this elective monarchy thing going. So it's really interesting developments in the Middle Ages. Here's another. This is Melchizedek here, Abraham here with his son Isaac, and then this is Moses here, and then this is Samuel who's turning toward, he's going to anoint David a king, and so the anointing of the church anointing a king. Yeah, this is going to be really interesting stuff that gets developed here in the early Middle Ages and on into the later Middle Ages. So let's start with Gregory. Start with Rome. Rome is in ruins. In the 300s, early 300s, Constantine had moved the capital because Rome is basically Boise, Idaho. It's just way out there. So get it where the population is. And so, Constantinople is created, what is now Istanbul, and you move the capital. And so there's really little reason for Rome to flourish, and so Rome goes into a long, long decline. There's the people who capture it. There's a sort of peace established, but basically, when Gregory is born to a great Roman family, it's in ruins. I mean, the statues are there, like this, and the heads are gone. He walks around a ruined city, a fallen city. And so what he's going to do is going to be, part of a type of revival of Rome. His family had a palace, up on the hill. And his mother and his aunt had created a type of monastery. These idea of monks had, as people living on a sort of city on a hill, a sort of, last stage before leaping off into heaven, sort of the purest of the pure up there, an Augustinian principle of the, a city of God, a sort of final place, because the world was falling apart. And so they're up there, and Gregory was a monk and wanted to be a monk. He's prays and reads and good scholar, very deeply connected to Augustine. And the people, in the way of the old Roman vox populi sort of way, this idea that the consensus of people speaking has a sort of Holy Spirit in it. The Pope dies, the Bishop of Rome at this point, and he's not all that important, this Bishop of Rome. He's not the Pope yet. He has very little jurisdiction anywhere else. He has very little authority anywhere else. Gregory is going to change all that. And the Pope dies, and so what people do is gather in the center, in the forum, the old forum, plaza and stuff, and they start yelling out names, and people yell out names, and then gradually the names gather, and they're calling out Gregory. They're calling out Gregory. They have chosen the people, whoever the people are. There's this abstraction. The people have chosen Gregory to be their new bishop. And this was not an abnormal way to get a bishop. And so he is obviously qualified. He's a big-time scholar. He's from an ancient family. He's got all the right stuff. And so Gregory submits to becoming the bishop of Rome. And this is around the year 600. And at this time, he starts to ask himself, sort of like, what is my job? Which is a great thing to always ask yourself. What am I supposed to do? And he sees himself as the servants of God, okay? And he sees that in this Augustinian way, there's a sort of there's a respublica, there's a Christian republic. There's the state, which he has to come down from his mountain, down from his monastery, and start to live in the real world. The sort of like the down here with the rest of things. And what his job is to confirm, coordinate, integrate, expand. He's a bureaucrat. He's a scholar bureaucrat. He's got a lot of work to do. And you notice, like, one of the things is like he's going to promote the Latin language and Latin education. And he wants people to be worshiping in the Latin. Let's all worship in the same language. And then he promotes the type of, well, if we're going to worship together, we need to sing together. Let's sing the same songs. And so the idea is, he doesn't write these songs, but the idea of Gregorian chant is this notion of, hey, worship songs that hold us together and help us commune. Even though we're far apart, we all are singing the same songs and speaking the same liturgies in the same language. Things like that, Everything from he's having the sewers fixed too. I mean, he's doing it all. So he embraced the sort of lowered expectations we talked of the St. Augustine, that just war expectation, which, hey, of course war is bad, but hey, there's gonna be war, and so let's just try and make it as best as we can. And so the church and the state are earthly. And Gregory is going to sort of lead this sort of earthly branch here. And he's got to, because they're out the west and the Roman Empire's not really involved much anymore, he's also got to absorb a lot of state functions too. He's got to be the person who sort of holds society together in Rome. Okay? So he embraces a lot of Roman administration stuff, and he tries to do all sorts of good things. He's just a fascinating guy, and he writes books, and he's a pastoral care and very concerned. He's just one of the most wonderful. He is Gregory the Great, And one of the things that is very important is that in your reading it talks about this, is that he sees the missionary duty of the church as crucial. And so, he picks it up out of the Bible, Great Commission and stuff. What am I supposed to do? I'm supposed to send out missionaries. I'm a bishop. I stay in one place, but I send out missionaries. And he's looking at these sort of issues, and he goes, well, and this is, the reading I had, you proposed him as a universal bishop, because there's bishops of Rome who are always claiming to be in charge of everybody. But the Rome thinks, but Gregory has no authority over the church, no real jurisdictional powers or anything. But he is one of the great traditional bishops of the church. And there's a bishop in Rome, there's a bishop in Alexandria, bishop in Jerusalem, bishop in Constantinople, bishop in Antioch. Antioch is huge. So he writes letters to these guys. There's a guy, Marcus, who writes a book on this. And he makes it clear that Gregory did not claim universal. He didn't control, Pope over the whole world. He said, hey, look, Alexandria, you're in charge of sort of missionizing that way. Antioch, you're in charge of missionizing that way. Constantinople, you're in charge of missionizing that way. Me, I'm in Rome, and my duties are to send missionaries this way. And so through these missionaries, largely, it's always way more complicated, but through these missionaries who established churches and monasteries and developed more Christian coordination. There's already Christians up here, and we'll talk about that in a second. He's not creating, he's not all pagans he's sending to. There's Christians, but you got to coordinate these Christians. The Irish Christians, and there's these Frankish Christians and stuff. Let's coordinate them, let's organize them, let's get them singing songs, let's get them doing education correctly, let's have pastoral ideas the same. So, with this is you get a type of jurisdiction that is created, which we later now see as like, whoa, this is the beginnings of a real papacy like we experience it today, where the Pope in Rome actually rules over a larger, he has jurisdiction over a bunch of other bishops and stuff like that. So in this situation, you have not necessarily a firm jurisdiction, but it's the beginnings of a advisory, people up in England, write letters. Gregory, what should I do? Because you sent me up here, I have questions. And so Gregory would write back. And Gregory also, organizer, scholar, bureaucrat, creates a library. So we have the Vatican Library, we have letters of Gregory, and we have these other letters and stuff like this. So what we now call Europe, which is an idea that there's a cultural sort of unity to all these areas up here, is sort of begun as a unified entity, a type of jurisdictional, something holds them together. Well, it is the Catholic Church. It is this relationship to this guy in Rome. And so Gregory's very important for that, and he is great. He's great. Let's turn to the secular stuff now. And we're rushing along here. We would have a good, fun conversation if we were in class. But I hope you're doing okay out there. Now, and I hope Google this stuff, read those Wikipedias and stuff like that. Don't believe them all, but there's a lot of really good stuff if you just get interested in anything we're talking about. Okay, so this is Clovis. If you live up in Fresno and you're Clovis, you should Google him. This is Clovis. No. This is Clovis and Clotilda, his wife. This is the bishop. What's his name? Remigius or something like that. The bishop who Clovis, his wife is a Christian, and she gets the bishop to convert her husband Clovis. And so you have the beginnings of this very strong alliance of the Franks, future French, and the church in Clovis, which becomes the later Louis, Clovis and Louis. And so you get this great Frankish area here. Now, this is a couple hundred years, well, it's actually 150 years after Gregory, okay? Is a guy comes along, and his name is Pepin, okay? Pepin the Short. And Pepin the Short, I'll give you a little, this is Pepin the Short here, but Pepin the Short, and, that's where a lot of these names come from that we have, short, little, big, these describer names. Pepin is he's the military ruler. His family is what's called the Carolingian family, and they have ruled over and run things, but they're actually not. He's actually not the king. The king is this other guy who's rather ineffectual. So Pepin gets the idea, I want to be king. Well, a lot of people in history, I want to be king. So should I? How do I do this? Well, a lot of people in history, when I want to be king, well, what do? You go kill off all the king's family and then become king yourself, okay? Bloody violence, palace coup, you can do this. Pepin does this in a very interesting way. He doesn't want to kill everybody off. Now, these are important people in world civilization who want to get something that they want, but do so without violence. These are the people who have to create and come up with new ideas. And what he does is he does an interesting, thing, but it sort of makes sense, is he writes to a bishop in Rome and says, who do you think should be king? And he, there's other stuff to this, but the bishop in Rome says, well, you're the one actually being king. And so in 751, Pepin is crowned the king. The other king is moved into a monastery and just shunted off, and his family go away. And the new family takes over without a great violence sort of thing. And what he does is he has in 751, it's the Pope's emissary crowns him. And this is the issue of, there's a painting here, which, Wikipedia said that this is the coronation by Boniface, the Archbishop of Mainz, for Pepin the Short in 751. I don't think so. I think Wikipedia is playing goofy with you, because he's got the papal crown here. That's not an archbishop. Maybe, I don't know. But this is, I think, the crowning in 754. The basic idea is that a bishop crowns a king. Where do you get this kind of stuff? This is a whole new politics, in the world. A bishop is crowning a king. And, we look back and, it's like Samuel crowning David, or something like that. Well, yeah, it is. That's the political theory, is it's coming out of there. But it's really haphazard how it comes about. We don't have a bunch of political scientists figuring all this out. It sort of just happens and grows. And so you've got two interesting guys, Gregory around 600, and then Pepin the Short around 750, who are creating a sort of new politics and a new powerful alliance between a guy in Rome and these kings in France. And then the guy who really develops this further is then Charlemagne. And Charlemagne is going to he sees himself like a Constantine, sees himself also like a Caesar Augustus, as a guy who's going to organize and really put together a huge empire. And to do this well, like Constantine, he's going to use his bishops. And this is a guy named Alcuin. Alcuin is actually a monk from York, way up in England, brings him down. Eventually he creates Alcuin as a bishop. And Alcuin's job, and one of the most famous things, is to send out letters to all the bishops under Charlemagne and say, hey guys, here's the things you got to do. And one of those things is create education. Let's get the churches should be in charge of education. And so there's a sort of public schooling, which is done through the churches, created by Charlemagne. And this is going to be really foundational for the development of universities later on. To finish off with Charlemagne is that here he is, Carolus. Carol is his name, and then Imperator. He's the emperor. And in 800, story goes, he's down in Rome. He's been expanding the Frankish kingdoms and stuff like that. He's king of multiple places. And then the Pope, the Bishop of Rome, just ratifies this by laying on top of his head, the wreath of a Roman emperor. And so there's a sort of like, he is emperor in reality, just as Pepin was king in reality, but it's the Pope, it's the Bishop of Rome who somehow confirms these things. And this is a very interesting politics that we now move into the Middle Ages with, and it'll get more fun. Okay, good.